Hello, everybody. My name is Gizo Chelidze, representing the Ministry of Environment of Georgia, International Relations and EU Integration Department. And from other side, I'm also representing several Georgian universities, Tbilisi State University, International Black Sea University. I'm delivering international relations lectures at those universities. I think the forum we are attending now is quite interesting, and it is quite challenging because such kind of conferences create good and solid basement for shaping public policy, international policy, foreign policy of different stakeholders and states involved in the international relations. Our session is called Hybrid War and Propaganda, and our moderator said that I was going in the beginning to be part of next session regarding ISIS, but I decided to talk about ISIS in my small speech today, and I would like to more generalized talk about the hybrid war and the propaganda. I will focus on 4 topics. This will be one about Georgia and Georgia's part in the region. I would like to shortly say my opinions about Black Sea region. I would like to talk about the hybrid war and the propaganda. My previous colleagues reviewed lots of issues, what should be done to avoid the threats and what should be done from different perspectives. I would like to say a few words about what we should not do and what are the mistakes we are making in our way when we are in fighting against terrorism. As my previous presenter said, the hybrid war is a unique war that is taking place at the moment. And it is very hard war because we don't have one battlefield, we have lots of battlefields, we have multiple threats. We never know when and where a threat will appear and what kind of threat it will be. We are not sometimes prepared for these threats, and we have seen the negative effects of the terrorist acts in Europe just several months ago. So the problem is quite clear, quite obvious, just in front of us. And I think Georgia, being the small country, still has its role in this war, and still it is also threatened by this war because Georgia is in a crossroad of Europe and Asia. Georgia has a northern neighbor, Russia, and we are in quite an unexpected war with Russia in 2008. Georgia is near to Middle East. Georgia is not safe from terrorism because Georgia is close partner of NATO, and Georgia several times participated in the NATO peacekeeping operations in the different hotspots, and we lots of times heard from terrorist organizations maybe Georgia will become a victim of terrorist acts. So we are not out of the big game, we are in, and we are in a hot place of the big game. Actually, the problem is that we are facing threats, but we are not at the moment members of NATO. We don't have this kind of protection. In the previous session, the Vice President of the European Parliament mentioned the Black Sea synergy approach from the European Union and the lack of the strategy. And he said that Black Sea region needs a strategy, political strategy, I think. But it's very problematic to have the political strategy. And why? Because the region is mostly geographic region, rather political region, because it's quite diverse. I hardly imagine to have one political strategy between Georgia, Ukraine and Russia, because these are the Black Sea countries, but how common political strategy can be achieved among these countries, because we are involved in Ukraine is involved in war, Georgia was involved in war, and we are in a hotspot at the moment because war ended in 2008, but still we have conflictual situation with our neighbors. So Georgia is in this problematic geostrategic territory. In the second part of my presentation, I would like to talk about the terrorism. Lots of is done against terrorism, but much more have to be done. And as I said, I would like to say what are the mistakes we are making. First of all, this is uneven approach to the terrorism, because the problem is identified. Terrorism is our problem, but world powers that can defeat terrorism are not together, and they are decentralized. The clear example of this is Syria. And Syria war, where different states, world powers are involved in the problem. For example, they're fighting against ISIS, but they are not together. For example, USA and Russia both fight against ISIS, but they are not together. And they have different approaches with Assad regime. They have different approaches with ISIS. The problem is one, but approaches are different. And this weakens our side, and this makes stronger the terrorism side. Another issue, how we call the terrorists, how we identify the terrorists. I'm actually observing the USA elections and speeches of the candidates, how they react to these ongoing issues. I heard from one candidate, Rubio, that this is a clash of civilization and either we will win or they will win. We heard from Donald Trump that we have fight with Muslim world, Islamic world. And I think this is the biggest mistake. It is not a problem of USA. Several European states, we heard this kind of statements. This is a big problem because if we call the criminal organization to be representative of whole Islamic world, if we call this terrorist organization to be civilization, it is not Eastern civilization. We know what is Eastern civilization. It is much bigger than ISIS. It's much bigger than Al-Qaeda. And we cannot say that we have fight and war with Muslims because to take example of Georgia. In Georgia, we have 20% of Muslim population in northern part of Georgia and neighboring territories with Turkey. And I will tell you that some people from these territories, some Georgians, went to Syria to fight and to become members of ISIS, and they are fighting. But there are some 5 or 6 people from Georgia, from Muslim population. And we have much more population, but I don't think the rest population are also terrorists. These 5 people are criminals for us, not like representing some kind of Eastern civilization or Muslim world. That is a problem because making this kind of statements, we help terrorist organizations to have much productive propaganda. Imagine the people living in a poor Middle East. Imagine people living in a situation when they have nothing to lose. And this strong terrorist organization with strong financial resources go there and have quite strong propaganda saying that we represent Caliphate, Islamic State, that they call themselves to be Islamic State. They call themselves to be something big and creating something big. And if we call them that they are Islamic States and they are Caliphate, they become much more stronger because they recruit new followers. And these new followers think that they do not think that they are becoming terrorists. They think that they represent Islamic world, they represent Muslim world, and they defend their own big Islamic state. So I think this is the big mistake if we do not be concrete when defining the threats, because our threat is a criminal, terrorist organizations, and I would like to join the efforts of the big players in the world, not to make them stronger by our mistakes. This was my short presentation. Thank you for listening.